Welcome into After Carmen, 11 Warriors' Ohio State postgame show from Ohio Stadium, where the Buckeyes could not have been much more dominant tonight. 56-0, the Buckeyes putting up nearly 700 yards of offense, while their defense getting their first shutout since 2019 and holding their opponent under 100 yards for the first time since 2017. Andy, it felt like Week 1, despite the 46-point win, there was still a little bit of disappointment on Ohio State's side. Like, it wasn't quite as dominant as they wanted to be, but this week you could not ask for much more.
Yeah, it's hard to find things to criticize from this game. And the things we found to criticize last week took massive steps. I mean, the running game was awesome today. Quinshon Judkins was in full form, breaking tackles, had a massive day even with having an 80-yard touchdown called back for a holding penalty. And I don't know what else you could ask for. I mean, Ryan in the post-game presser, of course, a coach is never going to say, you know, he's satisfied with the performance, he's resting on his laurels. But, I mean, the first thing that came to mind for him to criticize was punt coverage. I mean, or the punt return unit not getting enough pressure on the punter. It's like you're trying to nitpick little things like that in this performance. And again, the run blocking is what stood out to me as the greatest improvement from Week 1 to Week 2. Lots of holes out there to run through today. I thought Austin Saraveld might have taken the biggest step of anybody there, filling in at left guard again for Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson Day said after the game, we'll be back against Marshall in a couple of weeks, but it's just a good sign for the future of the depth, if nothing else. And Austin was moving a lot of bodies out there. We saw great blocks on the edge from Josh Simmons and Josh Fryer, some better perimeter blocking. G. Scott had a couple, even if he had a couple that were also a couple bad plays as well. Tight ends got a little involved in the passing game. Will Howard started out 10 for 10. Defense got a shutout, and Ohio State outgained Western Michigan in this game 683-99. That's a crazy margin in terms of yardage. So, just again, it's hard to find things to criticize from this game.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing last week was Ohio State starting slow, or at least relatively slow on offense. In this game, Ohio State scoring on 5 of its first 6 possessions, and really should have been 6 of 6, because you mentioned that 80-yard touchdown run that Quinshon Judkins had. If that hadn't been called back for a hold, it would have been 6 for 6. That was the only drive in the first 6 that Ohio State punted the ball on. And so really, I think a big step forward for the offense, just as dominant for the defense. I mean, when you think about players to highlight, I mean, we talk about him all the time on these videos, but Jeremiah Smith, man, that touchdown that he had, the pictures are crazy of it. You see Jeremiah Smith there in the middle. He's got 5 guys right on him, and he just pulled away from all of them to run for a 70-yard touchdown. You just see him make plays like that. You see what he did in Week 1. He had 119 yards tonight, which is already the 4th most a freshman has ever had in a game at Ohio State. In his second game as a Buckeye, and he didn't even play the whole game. I mean, you know, he had all that. I think he had all that in the first half, didn't he?
Yeah,
that was all in the first half.
His one catch in the second half got called back.
Right. So he had 119 yards at halftime. I mean, you just think about when he plays a full game, the things that he can be capable of this year. And, you know, you don't want to get too carried away, but you just see the things he does, and you're like, man, this guy is really, really special. He's the total package, and it doesn't feel like it feels like there's no ceiling there. Like, it just feels like nothing we can expect from this guy over the next 3 years feels like too much, because he just seems like such a special player.
After all the great receivers that have come through here, man, he feels on track to be the greatest of them all. That's just the trajectory he's on. And I think it was good for fans to see, because we knew it coming in, like how polished he was, how complete a receiver he was. You saw him win some really nice 50-50 balls, make some really nice catches in that first week. But what you didn't see really was the after-the-catch ability. And man, did he show it. It was just a 5-yard hitch route. He took 70 yards to the house, broke the safety's ankles, and split that crowd of defenders, like you said, and pulled away. Defensively, it's hard to pick just a few standouts, a couple guys you want to highlight. Jack Sawyer, again, nightmare for opposing quarterbacks, man. Had, again, multiple big hits, but got his first sack of the season, too, coming off the edge on a play action and just hair on fire. You could tell he really wanted that sack on that play. The defensive tackle stood out. I thought Ohio State dominated the line of scrimmage pretty thoroughly on that side of the ball. Arvell Reese got more action today, I think, mixed in with those 4-3 packages. It kind of feels like he has, at least in this game, he was ahead of C.J. Hicks in the pecking order. And I think that's telling of what they saw from him in week 1, they saw from him in practice, and even what they saw from him in this game. He made a couple more nice plays, a real nice tackle for loss where he lit up a dude for a third down stop. And Caleb Downs, I thought, he was a little quieter in week 1, and I think with how good this defensive line is, and some of the plays the linebackers were making, Cody Simon looked great today as well in his return. It's a little harder for those safeties to make plays. Lathan Ransom, of course, made a lot last week, but man, there was one play that Caleb came down in run support. It just looked like a missile right toward the line of scrimmage, and I think that's what you can expect from him. All over the field, and I think the bigger the stages, you'll see Caleb Downs have more and more of an impact. But a lot of this has been the front seven these first couple of weeks, and under 100 yards. I mean, that's a complete defense. You can't sleep on what the secondary did in this game either. It's just they didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to make plays because this front seven has been so dominant for the first 2 weeks.
And again, the depth. We talked about it last week. We could talk about it again. The depth. I mean, they lost who. I think is the best player on the team, Denzel Burke, in the first quarter due to a targeting penalty. Jermaine Matthews Jr. comes in, no drop-off. They just continued to be dominant all game. And you saw it later in the game. And Aaron Scott made a really nice pass breakup. Lorenzo Styles Jr. looked great out there tonight on both special teams and defense. He was flying around all over the place. You mentioned Arvell Reese. I totally agree with your assessment. It does seem like he has already usurped C.J. Hicks to become that third linebacker because tonight was the first time we saw those 4-3 packages, and how much did Jim Knowles say all offseason about that being a way to get C.J. Hicks on the field? Now it's all of a sudden a way to get Arvell Reese on the field, and I think the way he's played in these first 2 weeks backs it up. I mean, Gabe Powers made another really nice play up there. I think he's another guy in that linebacker group. I mean, I think tonight was really the first time in the Jim Knowles era that we've seen Ohio State mix and match at linebacker the way they did tonight. And I think that speaks to the depth they have at linebacker being stronger than it's been at some time here at Ohio State. And so I think at just all 3 levels of that defense, you see that depth. And then, on offense too. I mean, I think we saw, Brandon Innes is a guy, didn't have those explosive punt returns like he did in week 1, but did some really good things on offense when he got the opportunity to get in there in the second half. James Peoples continues to impress me. I think, he just has a way about him running the ball. You look at him and you go, you still don't love the overall depth at running back. I mean, nothing was more telling of the fact that this team doesn't have a ton of running backs and the fact that Mason Maggs, a walk-on quarterback, got in the game at running back late in the game. Pretty cool for Mason Maggs. But, James Peoples, but you do feel like, Quinshawn and Travion, I mean, you saw it tonight. This is the best running back tandem in the country. But you've got another guy that I think you feel really good about behind those guys in James Peoples as that third running back. I mean, how about that for a debut for Julian Sayin on his first drive as an Ohio State quarterback? Throws a 55-yard touchdown pass. Bennett Christian doing a lot of the work there, but certainly all the good things we've heard about Julian Sayin to do that on his first and only drive of the game tonight certainly can only help him going forward.
Yeah, and I thought Devin Brown played pretty well as well. He had a couple of very nice throws on the run to Innes especially, and those the quarterback depth, you like to see that because you wanted Devin, I think, to prove he's the number 2 guy if he's going to be the number 2 guy, right? And he was able to show sort of some of that veteran savvy in this game as opposed to Julian Sayin, who is a freshman. But still, you see it on the field with Julian. And I also really liked that the staff was willing to open up the full playbook to Sayin when he entered the game because they came out throwing the ball.
And the touchdown came on 4th and 1.
And the touchdown came on 4th and 1, that's right. So I mean, again, the depth on offense looked a little stronger in this game. Offensive line, I think the second and third units struggled a little bit. Well, never got to the third unit. The second unit struggled a little bit after they took the starters off the field on the front 5. But
still scored 2 touchdowns.
Still scored 2 touchdowns with them, yes. Just a few more lapses and things. But I think you feel better there because of how Saravel played today. and when Donovan comes back, he'll become a backup. So, that interior depth you always felt could be solid enough for Ohio State. It's just the tackles that need to come along behind the starting pair of Josh Fryer and Josh Simmons. But again, those two stepped up pretty nice today. I think that's I'm running out of good things to say, but there are a lot of good things to say from this game.
I think it's safe to say it has been a good day for Ohio State football fans. We saw Michigan look very bad in its game against Texas, a pretty thoroughly dominant performance there by Texas in that game. We saw Penn State struggle against Bowling Green. We saw Notre Dame lose to Northern Illinois, but Ohio State running into none of the trouble that Penn State and Notre Dame did against a MAC opponent as they dominated from start to finish. Exactly the kind of performance Ohio State was looking for. Now the goal is to keep that momentum going through the bye week. The players, a bunch of them said it tonight, so it was clear what the message was after the game. They said it's not a bye week, it's an improvement week. So while we don't really have much to nitpick, they're going to go back and watch the film and find out the things they could have done better, and they're going to look to be even better when they come back here in 2 weeks to play Marshall. So we'll see if that ultimately happens. It's going to be hard to top this one because this game was pretty damn good, but a great day, certainly, for Ohio State football fans, for the Ohio State football team, for Buckeye Nation, and we're glad to be here covering it for you. So stay tuned with us. Lots more to come from this game on 11warriors.com, and we'll catch you next time on After Carmen.